Right, I don't want to jinx myself, but hopefully this will be the final part. Oh hey, I haven't seen this one. The final part of the Trails of Cold Steel 3 run-through. We just have to skip a bunch of cutscenes, go through the final dungeon, read a few books, and we're done. I'm excited. It's gonna be great, because I'm almost certain, like how every other collectible book that you go through every single game has references to something future in the series, like the puppet one having to do with having like one chapter that is like weirdly out of place and is all about the puppet shop and Trails to Zero and Azure. And then Red Rune Rose, which has to do with what's her face? The Elder of the Hexen Clan. And also Toval's escapades in what was the name of that book? Can't remember. We'll get our perfect save file. We just need to fly through all this. All the enemies should be easy. They've been easy thus far, and I highly doubt the final boss will be any exception.
I'm up! I'm up!
That's one. This side won't be as cheesy, but hopefully it'll still be cheesy.
Divine!
Leave it to me. Let's... My turn. Go up in flame fire!
Yeah!
Free break.
Very well. Very well. An opening!
It's mine. Leave it to me. Light. Shine over us all.
Yeah! Let's go!
An opening! I'll handle this. It's off balance! Keep it up!
Leave it to me. Now!
It's mine.
That's one down.
Yeah! Sorry.
Leave it to me! Break through!
I'll handle this. Now!
Take this!
Leave it to me. Sorry.
I'll take over. Thunder bang! Leave it to me.
Let's...
Very well. Let's an opening! There! Leave it to me! Break through!
Let's go! It's off balance!
Take this! It's my turn. It's my now! Finish!
There we go. No, we just have a bunch of cutscenes to skip through, and then we'll be in the Grell of Erebos, I think. Come on. There we go. Finally.
Let's be careful, everyone.
It's my turn!
There!
Nice.
A powerful foe. Ready yourselves. We're back here again. We're still so high up that I can't even see the bottom.
No mistaking the malicious wind coursing through here.
Let's keep going. We need to stop the ritual at all costs.
Let's see, what quartz was it that gives me passive regen? That is so good.
Ooh, a treasure chest.
I see a powerful enemy.
Alright, this is where the first fight is, I think. Yep. Florem and Gaius. Oh, there's Gaius. Come on.
No words are needed. Here I come.
I'm up. I'm up.
You're dead.
It's my turn. It's now.
It's my turn. Now!
One down.
Impressive. Huh, that wasn't difficult.
I need to keep.
That wasn't difficult. My thoughts exactly. Also, he's floating on that platform. You can see he's like hovering slightly above it.
There's more? Here I go! There!
Nope, we cannot
Very
do that
well.
to those.
It's my turn.
A daunting foe. Let's test our might.
Guess we're running. You know what?
Let's do this.
Let's see, where is that item?
Ha!
It's my turn. You can't escape.
Let's go. I'm on. Strike! Get back! It's down!
It's mine.
All right.
Yeah.
I must train.
Let's level up Green some more. Why not?
Let's start the battle.
Ha!
Oh, that shining puff. Here I go. You can't get wide open.
An opening! Very well. Let's go.
Yes, yes.
My turn. Now, let's continue onward. All right, got it.
Yeah.
I must.
Got one more to burn.
I'll show no mercy. Yeah.
Oh. All right. Take this. It's my turn. Azure Wing, let's go.
Too slow. Let's go. Crimson Slash. Very well. Yeah. Heat's down.
Keep it up. All right. Wide open.
An opening. All right.
Yeah.
I must.
3 levels for everybody. Though we don't need it.
Looks pretty.
It's my turn.
Nice.
This place again.
There.
What's the sound? It's like a heartbeat.
We need to keep moving. There.
See, she's like hovering slightly above it.
I see a powerful enemy.
Let's see if I remember who we need for this one. Nice.
Ready, Fee? It's my turn. Swift. Let's go.
Yes. Go up in flame. Now's our chance. Not bad. My turn. Exterminating. Now. This one's mine. I got this. Here's our tap. It's mine. Leave it to me. Now's our chance. Read. Made a mistake.
Not bad at all.
I did it. Woohoo!
Is fight 2 done? Next is the fight with the Iron Bloods. Huh.
It's my turn.
Hitting L1 actually speeds up the section.
Oh,
Why
looks like there's
L1?
more.
Let's see, is Yuna strong enough to take out these guys?
There.
Nice. Perfect. More money, which we don't need.
There.
Oh, can't take out those guys, though. Hit the limit. Like, let's try this again. Yep. L1
You
works.
can sort of see the bottom now. We're getting closer.
Eustace?
No need to hold my hand, Machias.
looks like a real tough one.
Might as well squeeze him into the active party. Whoops. And Ring's good. Just trying to remember if there's something that can increase my damage even further, but not really. Best I could do would probably be Gugnir and hope for a critical hit. He does have 32% crit chance. Not something to scoff at.
Swiftly! Let's go! Leave it to me! On your knees! Now! Leave it to me! Petrifying Fury go here!
Keep it up!
My turn.
Damn it!
This is bad.
I'm up!
For you.
Get down now!
I can't fall here.
It's my turn. An opening! An opening! I commend you.
This is going to be the shortest stream. Because all we have left to do is read books at the final door. Is this the final door? Nope, we have to go one more. I forgot, there's like the
There
weird
seems to
mirror
be
things
more.
here. Or bombs.
My
Bombs?
turn.
Yes.
It's my turn.
So they do give you a warning at the final door. Alright.
A good spot for a break.
Yes. Before we move on, let's take in some of the potential future lore. And also the Black Records, because I should probably read this, shouldn't I? I believe this is like the original Black Records, like this stuff. These ones are shorter. Alright, so let's read the Black Records 1 through 7. First one, the founding of Heimdall, year 81. As the music's just blaring in the background. In the years following the Great Collapse, Adjudicator Arner chose Heimdall as his base of operations from which he planned to rebuild the land of Erebos. Before long, the city became a pillar of the region. And following that, its capital. The citizens, however, continued to suffer in the harsh post-collapse world. They wished for a strong, caring leader to see them through these harsh times. It was in Arner that their wish was granted. After being recognized as an adjudicator by both holy beasts, he was the clear choice. He was crowned as emperor and became the first of many rulers in the Arner bloodline. Upon his coronation, members of the Septian Church were dispatched from Arteria to endorse the new ruler. The people of Zumeria had lost the objects of their worship in the Great Collapse. However, the church provided them a new way of connecting with Adios, faith. In addition, by recognizing the legitimacy of rulers across the continent, they strengthened the foundations of its recovering civilizations. In the year 81 of the Septian calendar, the third emperor, Cyan Arner, had a great cathedral built in Heimdall. The cathedral was to be a bastion of faith and would serve as a site to crown future emperors, but it also held a far more significant role. Unbeknownst to the public, an artificial primal ground was created below the cathedral, a replica of the one that existed below Arteria. With the church's increased presence, the desperate times following the Great Collapse came to an end. The people had lost their civilization, but now had faith to sustain them in their search for light in the Dark Ages. However, 200 years later, the darkness that gripped Erebonio would pull them down into the depths of ruin. One of the holy beasts suddenly disappeared along with the primal grounds below the cathedral. It was that same day that the Dark Dragon's miasma laid waste to Heimdall. Are these in order? Yeah, they're in order. Magic Knights, year 527. 150 years after the recapture of the capital by Emperor Hector, powerful families rose across the empire while the imperial power stabilized. The empire slowly took on the form of multiple territories. The noble families were recognized by the emperor, and they soon began to quarrel over territories, starting many small-scale battles. During this time, great knights akin to Emperor Hector's Vermilion Knight appeared and were occasionally used in conflict. Some noble families received their own azure, violet, ash, silver, and gold knights, allowing them to wield overwhelming power and determine the outcome of battles. However, the Great Knights were something of a calamity. Other powerful noble families were not in search of more power or mira, but in search of some kind of resistance. Then came the mages' new creations, golems born of magic, the Magic Knights. Like many others, mages were in pursuit of the glory of the ancient Sumerians, and were obsessed with recreating it. With mira from the noble families and the help of a certain faction, several magic knights were created to resist the Great Knights. Unfortunately, these magic knights were imperfect. They had a crucial fault of only being operable when spirit veins were activated. Luckily, spirit veins were always disrupted wherever the Great Knights appeared, so the magic knights became a successful resistance countermeasure. In the year 527, the first golem that was used as a basis for the magic knights was created by a mage serving a now extinct but formerly known northern noble family. At the height of 5 Arj, this headless golem called Olgadia became a remnant of the mage's trial and error and a prototype for later golems. Black Records 3, year 942. 2 shadows wavered in the corner of a dark underground room, lit only by a small bonfire. I see you. I see, so you feel an overwhelming presence, do you? A young maiden stood before the fire. A faint breeze passing through the underground blew her hair, giving it the appearance of a flowing stream of gold, contrasting with the massive silver lance she held in her arms. Oh, are you telling me you wish to turn back before we have even begun? If you are, then so be it. This is far beyond the power of mankind. A young woman with golden hair and red eyes, wielding a dimly shining staff, answered in an antiquated tone. The maiden shook her head and urged the woman to open the door before her. It bore the crest of a cross surrounded by spirals. The maiden's name was Leanne Sandlot, the daughter of the Count of Loringen Castle in Legram. However, she would be remembered by history as the Lance Maiden. Raised in Legram, known for its masterful teachings of welfare, she displayed skill in the art of battle far surpassing her age. At the young age of 15, she was already a match for the Castle Knights. Said to have a godlike mastery of a lance on horseback, it wasn't before she had completely surpassed the other knights in competitions, amassing a veritable mounds of laurels and awards. The country was amazed by this young girl's incredible talent. The tale of the maiden who was stronger than the knights protecting her spread, and the people began to flock to her. At age 16, she began hearing a voice in her head. The voice was austere yet magnanimous. It told Leanne of the duty she had to fulfill, and the destiny she had to accept. Naturally, Leanne was upset by this voice only she could hear. However, it wasn't long until she met its owner, a mysterious woman who called herself a witch. The witch spoke of an entity sealed far below the castle and of Leanne's duty to become its master. Oh, really? Okay. So she was the awakener for that one that you find in Lorengin Castle, but you never actually go into. Its presence was overwhelming, and once claimed, it would bring its wielder great power. Yet, it also had the potential to cause great devastation. After much consideration, Leanne made a decision to undergo its trial. It was her way of trying to bring an end to the Empire's conflicts. In addition, as long as she held this power for her own, the noble families would never be able to abuse it. The witch was surprised by Leanne's answer, but recognized her determination and spirit by offering to help her. Thus, the door opened, and the Lance Maiden and the witch proceeded into the trial. 5 years later, the demise of the Emperor would lead to the beginning of the largest-scale civil war history had ever seen, the War of the Lions. The Lionheart Emperor, year 994. Forgive me, you believe now. Yes, sir, Please call me if anything happens. The head butler, now in his later years, bowed before leaving. The other man sighed deeply as he lied down on the bed. He was now elderly and sick. His well-trained body is sturdy as a fortress still, and very few would ever doubt the condition of his health. However, he was clearly aging, weakening, and felt his end looming over the horizon. The Lionheart Emperor, otherwise known as Dreikel Reise Arner. He was the 73rd Emperor, nearing the age of 70. After ending the 5-year-long civil war known as the War of the Lions, Draecos had been working tirelessly for 40 years. Although he was enthroned on the year the war ended, he had lost his Nordic friends and parted with the witch. He and his vassals worked hard to restore the empire. There were no regrets. No need to worry about the children either. The Empress had also urged him to give up on thoughts of the past. She was the daughter of a marquis who was assassinated during the Civil War, and although she was much younger than he, they fell deeply in love and she bore him 2 sons and 2 daughters. Although she passed several years earlier, their children remained healthy and would shoulder the burden of the reconstructed empire's future. The next generation is being raised as well. In the first half of the war, his best friend, Roland Vander, gave his life to protect him, and now Arner raised his son. The son was already in his 40s now, and he flourished as a martial arts master while serving as a military officer. Then there was Thor's Military Academy. He had established the academy 20 years prior. It was a place for the best and brightest, accepting students from various backgrounds. He'd be surprised. Okay. He smiled, thinking of his good friend that had fallen into a deep slumber at the end of the Civil War. The academy was constructed at the place where he now rested. Ah. So the old schoolhouse was the old Thor's Academy, okay. I mean, that was pretty much assumed already, but alright. It was deliberately built there over Valinor. By him. These long years weren't for nothing then. As long as I can endure that thing before Adios comes for me, that is. He looked apathetically to the corner of the room. There waited the nameless darkness. Today it came again to speak with him, begging pathetically, threatening with intimidation, subtle and inviting. He knew what it was ever since that day 40 years ago when he took the throne. I suppose I should be happy the children and their descendants were not cursed. If he were not the man with the lion's heart, it would have surely been the start of unbearable suffering and despair. Dreikel's, an incredibly nostalgic and harmonious voice. Long, golden, flowing hair suddenly appeared. Okay. Ooh, the salt pail. Are we actually getting real information on this? On July 1st, year 1178 at 5:45 a.m., a great catastrophe struck Northumbria, then a principality in northern Sumeria. A giant white pillar suddenly appeared on the outskirts of its capital, Haliask. The pillar was composed of not of snow or ice, but salt. As such, it was named the Salt Pail. A storm of salt spread outward from it, solidifying anything it touched. Despite only lasting a few days, its effects were felt for months afterward, as citizens fled south seeking refuge. In the immediate aftermath of the catastrophe, the number of victims equaled about 1/8 of the country's population. That number rose to nearly a third of the population with the inclusion of victims in the days that followed. After the incident, the Septian Church led evacuation procedures, provided aid, and employed hundreds from the Bracer Guild to help. In a short time, relief forces from Erebonia, Ranfaria, Jurai, Liberl, and the Republic of Calvard had assembled in Northumbria. Meanwhile, the country's leader, Prince Balmud, who had fled to a neighboring country at the start of the catastrophe, had returned to rebuild the government. However, he was met with violence from the enraged citizens for leaving them behind in their hour of need. And in the end, he was forcibly removed from power, and Northumbria became a democracy. The remnants of its former armed forces reformed as the Northern Jaegers. Erebonia, their neighbor to the south, had contradictory views on the new autonomous state. On one hand, it refused to recognize the legitimacy of the new democratic government. On the other hand, it eagerly welcomed the Northern Jaegers. Northumbria's extreme poverty and focus on bringing in foreign currency meant that the foremost soldiers were easily manipulated by the promise of imperial coin. The Jaeger Corps went around the empire, hiring themselves out to the nobility and newly developing businesses who were fighting over septium and natural resources. They turned out to be the perfect pawns for Erebonia to use in its proxy wars and internal struggles. Despite this, the massive amounts of mirror that flowed in from the Empire helped save Northumbria from its dire straits. 27 years after the catastrophe of the Salt Pale, the Empire annexed Northumbria as reparations for the Northern Jaegers' actions in the Civil War. As before, Erebonia's vast resources ended up lifting the former independent state out of its chronic poverty. Shortly after the disaster, the Septian Church restricted access to the northern half of the country. After the annexation, however, the Imperial Army's Intelligence Division began investigating the Pale. It has since been classified as an otherworldly singularity. One of the Intelligence Division's collaborators has been able to confirm that members of the Church's Dominion retrieved the Salt Pale and brought it back to Arteria. It is rumored, however, that a piece of the Salt Pale still remains on site in Northumbria. The Orbital Shutdown Phenomenon, year 1203. Septian calendar, 1203 February. The southern reaches of the Sutherland province. All orbital power came to a sudden stop in the area around Parm and Titus Gate. It had been a relatively mild winter, but without lights, communications, or heaters, the people of Parm found themselves subjected to cold and darkness for an entire week. The Sutherland Provincial Army was called to provide aid. After a short investigation, the source of the outrage was determined to be a city-sized airship that appeared over Valeria Lake in Liberl, the neighboring kingdom to the south. The floating structure had a height of 5,000 and a length of 3,000 arsh. The ancient Sumerian structure drew in nearly all orbital energy from the entirety of Liberl unto itself. Thus, the southern regions of Erebonia were affected as well. 3 days after the incident began, the Imperial Army's 3rd Armored Division moved with surprising speed from Dreknor Fortress to Parm, and then onto Titus Gate, giving support to those affected along the way. Though the Army's orbital tank ceased to function near the Empire's southern border, they also had a large number of steam-powered tanks available. Using the combustion-driven models allowed them to get around without relying on orbital energy. Even the cannons themselves used gunpowder ammunition. Though it wasn't ideal, it was enough to allow them to respond to the situation. The leader of the 3rd Armored Division was Lieutenant Zex Vander, a member of the family tasked with guarding the Imperial family and a moderate in the army led mostly by Warhawks. He felt conflicted as he led his division south into Liberlian territory. The government's stated reason for his current orders were to protect the citizens during the power outage and assist Liberl during the current crisis. The strange part was that the steam-powered tanks, which were vastly inferior to the orbital-powered models, had been commissioned by the Imperial government and provided to the army only a month before the incident. Though the 3rd Armored Division was the first to make it to the border, a number of divisions were on their way. In the end, the military intervention was stopped thanks to Prince Olivert of Erebonia's imperial family and Brigadier General Cassius Sprite of the Liberlian army. What about Estelle? With the arrival of Liberl's functioning airship, RCL, as proof that they could handle the situation without Erebonia's assistance, they were given the time they needed to restore power to the region. As orbital energy returned to the southern reaches of the Empire, it signaled the end of tension between the two nations. To certain individuals, however, it was clear that how does that sound? The faceless? The Anguis of Ouroboros, responsible for engineering the incident, had connections to Erebonia's Intelligence Division. Really now? Didn't know that. Small autonomous weapons the Faceless utilized during this period of time would later come to be known as combat shells. Black Record 7, Twilight Begins, year 1206. Between flame and earth, the wavering darkness begins to spin the tale of the end. First, the conflict of the great gods of the second pillar. Second, the fusion of earth and flame, and the completion of the 7 vessels. Third, the beginning of the 1,000-year city and the acceptance of the Graal. Fourth, the disappearance of the Holy Beast and the catastrophe of the Whispering Dragons. Fifth, the recapture of the capital and the Vermilion Curse. 6. The Lion's War and the Sacrifice of the Holy Maiden. 7. The appearance of the giant pillar in the north and the unwanted child. Unwanted child? Kia? 8th. The Sacrifice of the Village and the 100 Days Campaign. 9th. The Great Blue Tree to the east and the appearance of the Cursed Castle. Thus, the 1,000-year-old wish was fulfilled. When the sacrifice is made and the ancient blood flows, the path to the Growl of Erebos shall open. When the tainted holy beast is pierced by the blade of the world's end and its blood fills the Growl, the great twilight shall fall upon the land. So that was the whole prophecy. So the giant pillar, for whatever reason, was part of this prophecy, the salt pail. Interesting. So, you have a few stories. I wonder how many of these actually have a point in the story, but we might as well read them all. We got plenty of time to burn, right? I do have my next game downloaded, so if we end somewhat early, I might as well start that. But I want to do some reading before we do that. Take in everything the game has to offer. A long time ago, a boy named Mark lived with Shino, his younger brother. Mark constantly sought attention and desired to become a great swordsman to protect his hometown, so he devoted himself to sword training. Shino was very shy and looked up to Mark, following him around and imitating everything he did. As time went on, Mark indeed became a great swordsman, with strength easily surpassing all others. One day, a large monster ambushed the town, and the townsfolk asked for soldiers to protect them. And while some people fled in terror, Mark stood strong and headed toward the monster. "I'll protect my hometown," Mark cried valiantly. His sword was not fit to dispatch the monster, but he refused to give up and attack the monster with all his might. By the time the soldiers arrived, the monster had turned tail and ran. Mark proudly stood there on the battlefield, covered in blood and gashes. Thanks to Mark's heroic efforts, not a single person was injured, and peace was bestowed upon the town once again. A mother clutching her baby thanked Mark, for she lived close to where the monster had appeared. "Thank you, Mark," the mother said. "You saved me and my child. I will tell stories of your heroics when she is older." The baby smiled at Mark. Mark would never forget her smile. Everyone in the town praised Mark's bravery and regarded him as the local town hero. Happy that his hard work was paying off, Mark devoted himself to his sword training even more. Day after day, Mark always received praise and adoration from the townsfolk wherever he and Shino went. He was given special treatment at popular establishments and received gifts from many people. Shino was awed by how much people admired his brother. "How do I become a hero?" he asked one day. "It's simple, Shino," Mark responded. "First you get strong, like me. Then when you defeat a truly horrible monster, you'll get recognition and finally become a hero." Shiro nodded at his brother's advice. "Okay, I'll work hard and become strong and be a hero too." Something had changed within Shino the day Mark became a hero. It seemed as if Mark always did everything right while Shino was destined to fail. Shino had given in to this idea, but had given up on himself and his dreams in the process. But today, Shino had finally realized his dream, which was to become a hero. He would no longer live in his brother's shadow, but instead devote himself to becoming exactly like his brother. And from that day on, Shino studied under his brother's tutelage in order to become a hero. Mark continued his heroics and felling monsters whenever they scourged the town. With each passing day, Mark's swordsmanship grew, and eventually he was able to tear common monsters asunder without batting an eye. After battles, Mark would always wipe the blood off his sword in a stunning fashion, which gave Shino a sense of pride and the drive he needed to improve his own swordsmanship. However, all the admiration and praise Mark received finally went to his head, and he came to the conclusion that he was superior to everyone. "I am the only one defeating monsters around here," Mark arrogantly told the townsfolk. "Giving me the same treatment as those too cowardly to face evil is an insult to my heroism." As Shino didn't know any heroes but Mark, he began to believe what his brother said was true, and this pushed his desire to be a hero even more. Okay, so he became a dick. Mark continued to defeat monsters every day to protect his status as the local town hero. However, eventually the monsters stopped appearing, meaning that Mark couldn't perform heroic feats as often, and he started losing fans and receiving less praise. "Fine," Mark said haughtily. "If killing monsters is enough, then I'll just do something even greater." He believed if he showed the townsfolk even bigger and stronger heroics, they'd treat him like a hero once more. So Mark started venturing into the forest to dispatch monsters there, in order to boast about his strength and seek more praise. Shino followed him every time in awe of his brother's feats. One day, a thief appeared in town. Mark easily killed the thief, but believing that wasn't enough, Mark ventured outside the town and killed all the thieves he could track down. Thanks to Mark's heroics, nothing would ever be stolen anymore, and Shino continued to follow his brother and watch him kill without hesitation. On another day, a burglar came in town, but Mark tailed him and killed him. However, Mark wasn't satisfied with just the burglar's death, so he tracked down the burglar's family and killed them as well. Wow. While Mark was able to protect the townsfolk from crime, the town itself became known as a ruthless and barbaric community because of Mark's violent justice. And the more Mark brandished his sword, the less the townsfolk regarded him as a hero. Fearful of Mark's brutality, the townsfolk distanced themselves from the murderous swordsman. Why are they shunning me, the local town hero and their savior? Mark was confused, but didn't bother asking anyone's opinion, not even that of Shino. He was too proud of himself, believing himself to be the perfect being. I know what I have to do. I must become even stronger and kill more enemies. Surely they'll praise me and call me a hero once again. And so, Mark remained blind as to why people no longer consider him a hero. Obsessed with being lauded as a hero again, he pursued his sword training once more. Part 3, Successor. The townsfolk are too terrified to stand up to Mark. I'm grateful to Mark for saving our town, one local remarked, but if I say or do the wrong thing, he'll assume I'm an enemy and have my head. The others shared in the sentiment and started praising Mark again, both out of fear and to calm his wrath. Mark seemed satisfied with this, so he finally remembered how important a hero is, he arrogantly said to a crowd. Exterminating monsters is simply pest control. You see, if you don't kill them as soon as they appear, they'll multiply and wreak havoc. They must be destroyed, and I want you all to help me. One day, Mark was tracking a kidnapper that had been spotted in town, with Shino following not too far behind. Mark rallied some of the townsfolk who helped him uncover the kidnapper's identity, and decided to catch the criminal in the act. Mark stealthily tailed the kidnapper and waited for the latter to approach a victim, and pounced, like a lion that had caught its prey. The kidnapper was dead before he even hit the ground. Mark grinned, proud of his heroic efforts. He then extended a hand to the kidnapper's victim. You saw that, didn't you? You're safe now. I killed the enemy. The victim was a young girl. Mark recognized her as the smiling baby he had saved all those years ago when he had first become a hero, but her face showed no traces of that bright smile. Instead, she stood there dumbfounded and covered in the kidnapper's blood. Dad, why? Mark was confused. He had been expecting words of gratitude. He looked down at the dead, bleeding man and noticed a colorful bouquet and a birthday card. What's going on? Mark asked the stunned girl. I killed the man that kidnapped you. The girl stared at Mark, her pale face that was initially full of fright, now full of hatred. Murder, you murderer, why? Wait, what did my father do to deserve this? Mark was shocked at the young girl's words and couldn't believe someone of her age was filled with such rage. Saving this girl as a baby had started Mark's career as a hero. He felt a chill down his spine. Without saying anything, he turned around and left the girl with her dead father, Shino following close behind. Mark had no idea at the time that the kidnapper was the girl's father. Due to a family argument, the father had to sneak into town to see his daughter, which was where the kidnapping rumors started. And with their birthday drawing close, he'd been looking for the perfect opportunity to deliver his gifts to her. Mark fled the town, wiping the sweat off his face. He killed many monsters up until this point, but it wasn't until the girl called him a murderer that he'd realized he'd been killing other humans. I've been killing monsters, not people. Killing monsters makes me feel happy, so it's the right thing to do, right? He wondered aloud, trying to convince himself. Shino shrugged. He took down the enemy, so why don't we go tell the townsfolk, he asked. Mark felt unnerved. Why don't you tell them instead of me, he requested. But why though? Shino asked casually. After all, you're always rushing to brag about your heroics to them as soon as you can, anyway. Mark felt even more unnerved at Shino's detached words. The girl's voice started echoing in Mark's head. Murderer, you murderer, what did my father do to deserve this? Mark felt pure horror for everything he'd done and finally confessed to Shino. I'm going to stop pretending to be a hero. If you want to become a hero, you should. With that, Mark handed his prized sword, which was still dripping with blood, to his younger brother. Shino grinned, his eyes alight with alarming joy. Really? Then I'll be a hero in your place. Unable to hide his elation at finally achieving his dream of becoming a hero, Shino accepted the sword and plunged it into Mark's heart without a moment's hesitation. I killed the monster. So does that make me that makes me a hero, doesn't it, Mark? Shino beamed as his older brother fell to the ground. He wiped the blood of the sword and seethed it with pride. He was now the spitting image of Mark. All that needs to happen now is for the townsfolk to see that I'm the hero. As Mark watched Shino joyously striding the town, he repented his deadly sins and closed his eyes for the last time. That is a dark story. This seems like a crappy story, but just reading the title. Kobe goes to the museum. What's the title? Kobe and the M Museum? Once upon a time, there was a boy named Kobe who lived in Erebonia with his parents. One day, his parents took him to the magnificent Imperial Museum, which contained the Empire's turbulent history. However, Kobe was too young to understand and thought the museum was an old, boring place with old, boring artifacts. His mother gave him a warning. There are many people inside the museum, so don't let go of my hand, okay? Kids and their families who become lost inside the museum will be devoured by demons, but Kobe didn't listen to his mother's words. Yeah, whatever, he muttered under his breath. Several minutes later, Kobe grew bored with the museum and wanted to go exploring. While his parents were distracted by an exhibit, Kobe let go of his mother's hand and wandered around the museum. He waded through the sluggish crowd and ended up in an open room. There was a large mural on display with a winged dragon and powerful beasts. Kobe was moved by these mythical creatures, but soon felt disappointed upon realizing that they couldn't possibly exist in real life. There was an old painting hanging next to the mural. It had lots of small sealed caskets painted in a variety of sharp, vibrant colors. Kobe stared at this painting and soon felt uneasy. One of the caskets in the painting had its lid ajar, and the paint on the casket was peeling. Kobe wasn't sure what the painting meant, but he was drawn to it nonetheless. He continued to stare at the painting until someone spoke up to him from behind. "You like this painting?" Kobe whirled around. There was a girl slightly older than him standing there with a warm smile. The girl continued waiting for Kobe's answer. "Museums are so quiet and only have old stuff lying around, which is boring, but I really like this painting." Kobe was drawn to the girl for having the same thoughts as him. "I feel the same way, and look at how this casket is open here. It's like the color just popped out of it." The girl's face brightened, and she took Kobe's hand. "We really get each other. I found something else cool. Want to come see it with me?" Kobe's face also brightened at having a companion, and he agreed to go with her. The two walked around the museum together, exploring the different rooms and exhibits. Kobe loved what the girl showed him, and he completely forgot how bored he had been with his parents. I've been stuck in a hospital up until now," the girl admitted. "I'm really glad I can explore the museum with you," she added, blushing. "Thanks. I like being with you way more than being with my parents," Kobe confessed. The girl looked concerned and asked him where his parents were. "I left them at some exhibit," Kobe said, shrugging. "I got bored with them." The girl nodded. "I see." They finally finished exploring the museum. "Wait," the girl said. "I want to show you something super special before you go." Kobe didn't question the girl's words, and she took him by the hand again. The museum crowd began thinning out, and the pair soon found themselves in an empty room. There was an ancient door before them. Kobe felt as if the door was staring ominously at him. "It's past here, but the door's too heavy for me to open," the girl said. "But that's why you're here. You're a strong boy, aren't you?" She ushered Kobe closer to the door. "You can open it." Kobe placed a hand on the door's handle as the girl kept encouraging him to open the door. What is this, the Phantasmagoria? Part 2. Kobe encounters the unknown. Kobe tried opening the door, but it didn't budge. Strange. Annoyed, he started pushing and pulling the door with all his might. Finally, the heavy door swung open with a loud groan. A cold gust howled at the pair as they saw a dark stairwell leading underground. "There's something super rare down here. Come on." The girl took Kobe's hand once more and started leading him down the stairwell, but Kobe stopped her. "Wait, are we going to get lost going down here? We don't know where it leads and could be dangerous." Although Kobe had lots of fun exploring the museum with the girl, he was hesitant about exploring underground. The girl looked at him puzzled. "Are you scared? I thought you were brave and strong." Her face fell and she hung her head. This is all that was needed for Kobe's pride to get the better of him. "Huh? No way, I just thought you might be scared, yeah." The girl's face brightened. "Oh, really? Oh, that's so nice of you." She smiled and led him down the stairwell again. The two continued walking down the dark stairwell, with the girl leading Kobe. "We're almost there," she said. Her grip on Kobe's hand was starting to get stronger with every step. Kobe lost track of how long they'd been descending the stairwell, and suddenly the girl stopped. "We're here." Kobe stared around. They appeared to be in a room that looked exactly like the painting with the caskets he'd seen earlier when he first met the girl. There were several caskets lined up, with only one with its lid ajar. A cold air in the room filled the space with tension. But Kobe had completely forgotten about his hesitancy. He was extremely moved to see the same painting in real life. Wow, it's just like the stuff in the painting, he exclaimed joyfully, his words reverberating around the room. The girl smiled maliciously. You know, she said quietly, they call this place the Catacombs, a place where no one can hear you and no one will rescue you. Kobe whirled around with the girl's disturbing words. Suddenly, the girl's sweet, saturine face began distorting and turned into a black shadow with red glowing eyes. Her soft hand also turned into a shadow and began crushing Kobe's hand. Ah! Kobe screamed. He desperately tried to flee himself from the shadow's grip, but she was too strong, and he started shaking with terror at the situation. The shadow laughed with malice, traces of the girl's voice still present. There's no need to scream. Everyone's already awake thanks to you. Suddenly, the caskets began rattling, and more black shadows began to emerge from them. Kobe froze, paralyzed with pure horror. His mind blank as he stared all around him. Kobe suddenly remembered what his mother had told him. There are many people inside the museum, so don't let go of my hand, okay? Kids of their families who become lost inside the museum will be devoured by demons. Her words were coming back to haunt him. He was telling the truth. He hung his head, feeling remorseful, and the black shadows started to advance on him. If only I'd listened. I'm sorry, Mom. Kobe accepted his fate as the shadows opened their mouths and converged on him. Part 3. Kobe learns his lesson. Suddenly, there was a loud rumbling from deep within the catacombs. An enormous dust cloud as tall as the ceiling made its way toward Kobe. Instinctively, Kobe covered his eyes with his free hand as the small specks of sand within the cloud pelted him. The cloud soon vanished and Kobe lowered his hand. Though his vision was obstructed by the dust, he was able to barely make out a giant silhouette in front of him. It cannot be. Shocked, the black shadow holding Kobe's hand loosened its grip. Kobe didn't waste another second. He darted from the circle of the black shadows. The black shadows had formed around him, but a gravelly voice soon stopped him. Do not move, boy. Kobe involuntarily straightened up and stopped as he had been commanded. The voice spoke once more. Gentle spirits controlled by evil, I now grant you passage back to Adios. Then beads of light surged toward Kobe in the shadows. The latter screamed in agony as the beads of light struck them, causing them to vanish. Ah, a similar voice screamed. Kobe turned. The shadow that had gripped his hand was engulfed in the light, and the girl re-emerged as the screaming faded. Kobe and the girl stared at each other, silence falling between them. Finally, the girl spoke, tears streaming down her face. Sorry I tricked you, but I want you to know that I had fun exploring the museum with you. I was happy we were almost friends. That part was real. Beads of light bounced off the catacomb walls and shone on the pair, and the girl began to fade away in the light. Kobe rushed towards her and grabbed her hand. I believe you, he exclaimed. Because of you, I was able to enjoy the museum for the first time. I'm glad I met you, and we're already friends, right? I can't just stand here and let a friend cry. He kept pouring his heart out to the girl, but she continued to fade away. She initially looked surprised at his words, but soon gave him the same warm smile she had given him when they first met. Thank you, you're right. I can't cry, now that we're finally friends. Kobe's face fell. He could no longer feel the girl's hand in his. Don't worry, the girl continued, still smiling. I know we'll meet again someday. She vanished into the light, and Kobe stared at the spot where she had vanished, his vision blurred by his tears. Eventually, the light faded away, and a similar voice spoke, bringing Kobe back to his senses. It appears you made a good friend. A dust cloud containing the giant silhouette cleared, and Kobe can now clearly see its identity. A dragon? Kobe said, stunned. It was indeed a magnificent dragon with brilliant wings. The dragon spoke again, its voice reverberating around the catacombs. You are very nearly consumed by evil spirits. Only those who do not listen to their parents will be led astray. Sound familiar, boy? Kobe's elation at meeting a dragon subsided as a shiver ran down his spine. Yes, he admitted, feeling guilty. Mom told me to stay close, but I didn't listen. The dragon stared at him with a piercing gaze. You do know what you did wrong, do you not, boy? Kobe nodded silently. There's a rumor that exists in this museum, the dragon continued. When children break their promises with their parents, they shall all be consumed by demons. You were attacked, boy, but what about your parents? Kobe froze in horror at the dragon's words. No, Mom and Dad too. Please save them, he begged. But the dragon dropped its gaze and shook its head. Your parents were genuinely worried about you, the same way you worry about them. But you brought this upon yourself, boy. Your mistakes cannot be taken back. Kobe felt remorse for the first time in his life. He felt awful for being a nuisance to his parents and not listening to them. He fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. The dragon stared at the crying boy for a moment. However, you can shape your future with your actions. You understand what will happen if you commit the same mistakes. Kobe wiped his face and nodded. The dragon moved closer to him. Kobe could see his reflection in the dragon's piercing eyes. He suddenly felt as if he was being sucked into the dragon's eyes. He began to lose his balance. Make choices your friend would be proud of, he thought he heard the dragon say. Kobe came around and attempted to sit up, but he felt something wrapped around his legs. Don't move, it's too dangerous, a worried voice said. He looked around. His mother was staring at him, while his father was carrying him. His eyes widened. Mom, Dad, you're okay, Kobe cried out. Where's the black shadow demon? His mother looked puzzled. What do you mean? Did you have a nightmare? She asked, concerned. Kobe looked confused. You became tired after walking around the museum with us, so your father cured you after you fell asleep, she explained. Kobe still looked confused, but soon felt relief wash over him. Tears began to stream down his face again. His parents looked concerned and couldn't understand why their son was upset, but they comforted him regardless. Eventually, Kobe jumped off his father's back and insisted he walk on his own. Alright, but don't go running off, okay? His mother said, still worried. You just woke up, you might trip and fall. Kobe smiled. I know, but you don't need to worry about me anymore. Sometime later, Kobe visited the museum again and tried finding the door to the catacombs, but he had no such luck. He then returned to the painting of the catacombs. This time, all the caskets were sealed, and there were now plants sprouting under a warm light. It looks better than before, he said, smiling. Kobe would never forget about that particular day, and he made sure not to worry anyone ever again. After all, he thought, I can't do anything embarrassing if I'm going to see her again. Though his parents were stunned by his son's maturity, they continued to love and protect him all the same. As Kobe grew up, he kept the dragon's words close to his heart, and he eventually became a respectable and mature adult in Erebonia. Interesting story. Life a Tomatonio. Is this like a story of like the sentient tomatoes that you can sometimes face in this game? Part 1. Tomatoes leaving the nest. Once upon a time, there was a tomato named Tomatonio. He was proud to be born a tomato, and he strove to be a great tomato so he could achieve his dream of being eaten one day. Tomatonio worked hard every day to make his dream a reality, and the farmer raising him continuously gave Tomatonio words of encouragement. I'm so proud of you. I hope you can grow to be a delicious tomato and make people happy. Tomatonio never stopped pursuing his dream, and he eventually grew to be a plump, brilliantly red tomato. However, a lazy tomato mocked Tomatonio for his dream. Ha! Working hard is so not cool. It's much cooler to slack off. Tomatonio ignored the lazy tomato's words. There was also a skinny crow who quarreled with Tomatonio since the day they met. When the crow had come to steal tomatoes, Tomatonio would proudly share his dream, telling the crow, one day I'm going to become a delicious tomato dish and make everyone happy, only for the crow to mock him and reply, even if you made it to the market, you'd either be left unsold on the shelves or go straight into the trash. Despite these words, Tomatonio was determined to accomplish his dream, and no one could break his will. At last, harvest day arrived. Tomatonio's heart filled with anticipation, for he'd been waiting his whole life for this. Soon, however, the clear sunny sky became covered by dark, ominous clouds, and the winds began to blow. It was a typhoon. All the other tomatoes were helplessly blown away by the powerful winds. However, Tomatonio desperately clung to his vine with all his might. I won't give up until I achieve my dream of being eaten. Somehow, he managed to survive the stormy night, and when morning came, the typhoon had started to dissipate. Tomatonio was relieved to have survived, though he was quite upset at harvest day being ruined. He then felt something strange about his body. Filled with dread, he looked down. Oh no! His once plump, brilliantly red body had been devastated after the enduring storm. Cute. Part 2. Tomatonio falls off the vine. Someone called out to Tomatonio as he stared at his own body in shock. It was the lazy tomato, who had also survived the storm due to its small size. Ha! Nobody will want to eat you like that now. The lazy tomato jeered. Despite this, Tomatonio was still confident about his body, from his brilliantly red color to his deliciousness. But at that moment, one last wind from the typhoon passed through the field, turning up dirt and dust. Tomatonio desperately clung onto his vine again, but this time his efforts were in vain, for the vine holding him finally snapped. Carried by the wind, Tomatonio tumbled toward the forest. His brilliantly red body became scuffed and scratched and covered in dirt. It seemed to go on forever. He finally came to a stop and found himself in the middle of a vast forest. As Tomatonio sat there stunned, he heard footsteps nearby and glanced around for the sound. He found himself face to face with a powerful boar, notorious for destroying crops. Huh, there's a delicious-looking tomato on the ground here, the boar said, moving his salivating mouth closer. While Tomatonio wasn't exactly thrilled to be in the boar's presence, he was delighted at the boar's words, thinking that he'd be eaten. However, the boar instead seized the lazy tomato, who had been blown away by the typhoon's last wind. The healthy-looking lazy tomato grinned with pride as it vanished inside the boar's mouth. Soon the boar cried gross and promptly spat out what was left of the lazy tomato back out. I've never had a tomato taste this bad. The boar glanced over at Tomatonio, and that one looks even worse. I know it isn't delicious. He left the 2 tomatoes on the forest floor. Tomatonio was deeply hurt by the boar's words. Please don't judge me by my looks. I know I taste delicious. His pained voice faded away into nothingness and was swallowed by the dark forest. Time passed, and Tomatonio found his freshness quickly fading, but he was still determined. I'm not giving up. No matter where I am, I'm still proud of being a tomato. I'm going to be the most delicious tomato ever to bring happiness to whoever eats me. Okay. Tomatonio managed to cheer himself up with his own words, and using the last of his strength, cleaned up his wounds and tightened himself up. Suddenly, his mud-covered skin regained its radiant luster and reflected the dazzling color of the sunset. After a short time, a black shadow appeared in the orange sky and descended in front of Tomatonio. These stories really like black shadows, huh? Alright, part 3. A fitting end. It was the skinny crow from before who was always mean to Tomatonio. What's Mr. Goody Two-Shoes doing in a place like this? The crow snarked. And you've gotten awfully ugly since the last time I saw ya. But Tomatonio faced the crow, his face still filled with determination. Go ahead and laugh. I still haven't given up on my dream, he said defiantly. The crow smiled devilishly. I knew you'd say that. You just don't know when to give up, do ya? Suddenly, the crow seized the vine on top of Tomatonio's head and flew high into the air, soaring across the orange sky into a destination unknown. The other crows and forest animals gazed in awe at the flying crow. Why aren't you eating that tomato? They would ask. And the crow had a response for each one of them. Instead of a fancy gourmand like myself, I know the perfect person for an ugly tomato like him. Tomatonio worried about where he was being taken, but nevertheless thanked the crow for rescuing him from the forest. The crow only scoffed coldly in response and continued flying. After some time, Tomatonio finally succumbed to his exhaustion and fell asleep, entrusting the crow with his life. The crow spent the entire night flying, and soon Tomatonio awoke to the cool morning fog. They finally arrived at a restaurant owned by a legendary chef. The crow deposited Tomatonio on the restaurant's kitchen counter and perched on the windowsill. This is the perfect place for an extraordinary tomato like you, the crow said. He then scoffed again. Huh, I must be an idiot. I can't believe I actually respect your determination. Suddenly, the crow fell off the windowsill. A soft thud was heard shortly after. Mr. Crow, Tomatonio cried out. The crow had stopped stealing from the field since meeting Tomatonio. Though his new lifestyle left him physically weak, Tomatonio felt sad for the crow. Thank you, Mr. Crow. You were a good friend to me, as he reflected on the memories of the crow. The legendary chef and the other chefs entered the kitchen. What's this? On top of the kitchen counter was a hideous-looking tomato covered in leaves and dirt. We ought to throw this ugly thing out, one chef said, but the other chefs agreed. And made to grab Tomatonio, but the legendary chef stopped them. Now wait just a moment, the legendary chef said. This is no ordinary tomato. Look not at its appearance, but its substance. The legendary chef scooped up Tomatonio gently and washed him carefully. It may not look like a good tomato, but I am certain that this is an extraordinary and delicious tomato. I can make a great dish out of this. The other chefs murmured at these words, and the legendary chef immediately started prepping a meal with the determined tomato, who finally had his dream realized. And thus, Tomatonio was reborn into a great dish. The children who despised tomatoes would grow to love tomatoes after eating this dish and be filled with happiness, and they would never forget how delicious this tomato tasted for the rest of their lives. Cute. And now Heartless Edgar, the actual story. Aside from the Black Records, right? All this talking is burning my throat, just like the good old days. Chapter 1. Autumn Dawn. Rays of light spilled through the curtains, brightening the walls of the bedroom before finally coming to rest on my face. I slowly opened my bleary eyes and made my way to the window. I gently touched my fingertips against the dew-covered glass, feeling the sun's warmth. I turned around to see you still lying in bed, asleep. Your tranquil expression was illuminated by the same dawn light that had stirred me from my slumber. I moved in close, pressing my nose against yours, but you didn't stir. I gently stroked your hair, but you still refused to wake. In one final attempt to rouse you, I pinched your cheek, but all you did was make a face and roll over. Gently chuckling to myself, I straightened the bedsheets and left the room. I went to the kitchen and began warming up the soup left over from last night. Next, I started making the salads we were going to have for lunch later. Lettuce, ham, and hard-boiled eggs. I cut up a tomato, taking care to only add the slices to one of the salads. After all, you don't like tomatoes. I remember you telling me the story. I think I was about 4 years old. My father tried to feed me a tomato, and I spat it right back out at him. I have no idea why, but I just can't eat them. You laughed and looked away, a twinge of guilt playing across your eyes. Just as I was finishing up with the food, I saw the bedroom door swing open. Good morning, you said, stretching. It was clear you had enjoyed your doze. Hey, Edgar, you looked at me. Edgar? Edgar, you call my name. Edgar, you call my name over and over. Hey, Edgar! You... Huh? My eyelids snapped open. My ears were suddenly filled with sound. I was in a restaurant in town. Sitting across from me was my friend, Henry. His long green hair was unkempt, as though he'd just rolled out of bed. A small trail of steam rose upward from the hot plate of food he had in front of him. I instantly understood what was going on. Can I get you some water? The waitress Clementine was standing over us. I looked up into her eyes. They were as clear and blue as a summer sky. Oh yeah, Henry started to say. No, we're okay. Don't worry about us. I interrupted. Clementine looked confused, but stepped away to see to the other customers. What do you mean? Don't you worry about us? What if I'm thirsty? Henry furrowed his brow at me. I don't want to bother her, I said, glancing in Clementine's direction for the briefest moment. Bother her? It's just a glass of water, man. Henry sighed and began sullenly chopping on his food. Here, have mine too. I pushed the plate, bearing my untouched sandwich towards him. My head's all muddled. I don't think I have much of an appetite anymore. That's been happening a lot lately. You okay, man? Henry's dour expression turned to one of concern. I'm not sure. I keep getting flashes of this one scene. It feels like a memory, but I don't recognize it at all. I raised my gaze and stole another glance at Clementine as she walked through the restaurant, smiling and talking with the customers. Henry followed my gaze towards her, and a look of understanding came over his face. Now that I think about it, this all started after you first noticed her, huh? Ah, I should have known. I've seen the sad eyes of a lovesick fool before. He nodded to himself knowingly. Is that what it is? I questioned Henry. Yet I couldn't take my eyes off Clementine. Well, I guess you know me best, Henry. As I spoke, Clementine noticed my gaze and gave me a warm smile before returning to her work. Since I don't seem to know myself anymore, I sighed. What my dearest friend could give in response was a troubled chuckle. September, 17th calendar, 1294. Lemon, home to the headquarters of the Epstein Foundation. I plan to devote my time here to performing research alongside the other members of the Foundation, but then I fell in love. Huh. So this takes place in Lemon State. So we might meet the guy who made the story then. Chapter 2. My name. When did my feelings for Clementine first start? I couldn't remember the exact day. All I knew was that, for whatever reason, I couldn't stop thinking about her. Every day, I'd find myself going to the restaurant. Once I got there, I'd spend my meal watching her, gazing at her flaxen braids swinging behind her as she flitted to and fro. I wondered what she thought about me. Did she like my voice? Did she think I was handsome? Did she feel the same way I did? These thoughts would bubble up in my mind and fade away. Hey, people don't like when you stare at them like some kind of creeper, you know? Henry interrupted my thoughts with his usual blunt tone. You're at the restaurant just like any other day, but I'm not a creeper, I said, briefly tearing my eyes off Clementine. He flashed a look that told me he was unimpressed with my response. Look, I come here with you every day, and you just sit in a corner and stare at her. At this rate, I'm worried that they're going to toss you in jail for stalking. They'll throw me in there too as your accomplice. Is coming here every day all it takes for me to be a stalker? I asked. No, but that's not the issue. Wait, why am I even explaining this to you? Henry's frustration with me was clearly mounting. Because we're pals, I answered. He let out an exaggerated sigh and threw his hands up in defeat. After a moment, he put a serious expression and leaned in towards me. But for real, man, what are you going to do? Do you really just plan to come here day after day? Yeah, I can't really think of anything else to do, I shrugged. Henry shook his head at me. Come on, that's not going to get your feelings across to her. And what do? I asked. You gotta tell her how you feel. Just go over there and say it. Brace yourself for the worst and just say it, Henry told me. But I guess if you're too scared for that, the safe way would be to make her like you more first. How would I do that? I struggle to think of something that lovers do. Hold her in my arms or something like that? Are you for real, man? Henry raised an eyebrow at me. Okay, if I were to give an example off the top of my head. Is that how you treat a paying customer? Suddenly, Henry was interrupted by the sound of a drunk man yelling at someone on the other side of the restaurant. I looked over to saw who he was so riled up at. To see. That is the grammar, but alright. It was Clementine. I'm sorry, sir, but I'm working right now. I can't do that, she said. I could hear a hint of fear behind her professional tone. Oh. Huh. All I'm asking for you is to have a little drink with me. Come on, girlie, let's have some fun. The man slurred his words, clearly deep in his cups. Well, something like that, actually. Henry nodded at the scene playing out before us. If you swoop in and save the day when she's in trouble like that, I'm sure she'll think better of you. Though you should probably stay out of this one, to be honest. Henry leaned back in his chair and pulled out his comm ornament. This might be a bit more than you can handle, so we better leave it to the pros. Okay, got it. I stood up and began walking toward Clementine. Hey, wait! I heard Henry exclaim as I left, but I ignored him and kept going. Huh? Who are you supposed to be? Me and the lady are talking. You can have your turn later. I can smell the alcohol in his breath from an arch away. I'm here to talk to you, actually. As I said this, the man's unfocused gaze froze on me. I'd rather not bother the other customers in here, so why don't we talk outside? I continued. Huh? Got nothing to talk to you about. You want to go outside? Go on your own. Like I said, I'm talking to the lady here. The man's face grew redder. Well, she clearly doesn't want to talk to you, so let's go outside already, I retorted. The man's expression quickly twisted into an enraged scowl as he shot out of his seat, knocking over everything on his table with a loud clatter. It turned out he was much bigger than me. Don't try to act big, you little shit, or you're gonna get hurt. Please go back to your seat. I can handle this, Clementine said as she put herself between the man and me. But you're shaking. With her arm in front of me, I was able to see clearly. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she pursed her lips tightly and gave me a determined look. I'm not moving from this spot until you go back, her voice cracked ever so slightly. Oh yeah, I guess I'll have to move you then. The man shoved Clementine aside and grabbed at my collar. At the same time, he swung his fist at my face. Right as it was about to make impact, however, I heard a commotion from behind him. That's enough. Several sets of hands grabbed him, stopping his punch mid-swing and holding him in place. We gotta report a disturbance. Both of you stand down. One look at their shining badges is all you need to figure what's going on. We're from the Bracer Guild. Coming back with us to our guild branch, we're all gonna have a nice chat, said one of the bracers. Bracers, hold on a sec, we weren't fighting. The man quickly let go of me. We were just having a bit of fun, right, kid? Well, I sure wasn't having any fun. It was an honest answer on my part, but the man didn't seem to appreciate it much. His face turned red again and contorted with anger. The hell! You shut your damn mouth, you little punk! Before the man could do anything, however, the bracers had pinned him on the floor. That's enough. Come quietly. The bracers subdued him and began leading him out of the restaurant. Despite his anger, only a moment ago, the man began sobbing. Please don't call my mom, okay? I'm begging you. I watched them walk out the door just as I was about to turn and check on Clementine. One of the bracers put his hand on my shoulder. He was a well-built man, and it was clear from his expression he took his job seriously. I would later learn his name was Boris. You guys are saviors. You guys are lifesavers. I turned to him and said, Thanks for taking care of him. We have to bring you in too, you know, Boris said as he tightened his grip on my shoulder. After all, both parties are to blame when a fight breaks out. Didn't they teach you that in school? Both parties, huh? I said absent-mindedly. Everything that had gone on for the past few minutes had overwhelmed my mind a bit. As I was lost in my days, Boris led me out of the restaurant with the other bracers. After Edgar left the restaurant with the bracers, Clementine just stood there, shocked. Sheesh, sorry about the commotion my pal caused, said a voice from behind her. Sometimes he gets so stubborn not even I can stop him. He just runs off and does whatever he likes. It can be kind of a pain. It was Henry. He let out a chuckle at the results of Edgar's clumsy attempt at heroism. Clementine simply stared at the door Edgar had been escorted through moments ago, however. Noticing this, Henry's laughing tapered off awkwardly. Are you okay? Who is he? She asked. Huh? Your friend, what's his name? Clementine continued to gaze at the doorway as she asked. Oh, right, Henry stammered, slightly flustered at the unexpected question. It's Edgar. Edgar, Clementine mumbled to herself. I didn't get to thank him. Watching Clementine lost in her thoughts, Henry could only manage a wry grin. Really? Vampire sound effects. Alright, Chapter 3. The Setting Sun. The bracers' questioning went by quickly, and they released me once I was able to explain the situation. The other man was released as well, though not before a stern lecture. Sheesh, you're a real pain, you know that? Went around to Henry the next day. He was already annoyed with me. I told you, didn't I? He said. The crease in his forehead growing. What would you have done if you got hurt butting in like that? What even possessed you to jump in anyway? Usually Henry didn't lay into me like this until much later in the day. Clementine was in trouble. You told me if I helped her, she'd like me, right? I responded. A flash of anger spread across Henry's face. This was his usual reaction when my matter-of-fact responses got under his skin. Sure enough, it was quickly replaced with his usual look of exhausted resignation. After you left, she asked for your name, and I told her. Oh, thanks. Despite my droll response to Headley, my mind started racing. Now you've just gone from just another customer to that crazy guy who almost got beaten up, he said with a half smirk. She was disappointed she didn't get the chance to thank you. Really? My head started swimming at the news. When I stepped into that argument, I could see she was shaking, I said, thinking back. Well, of course she was. Anyone would have been scared in a situation like that. She must have a pretty strong will to have kept her cool like she did. Yeah, I said. I think she's a strong woman. If something like that happens again, I want to be there to help her. Oh yeah? Henry shot me a sardonic look. Well, I'm not going to save your ass next time. Huh? My head suddenly stopped swimming, and the gears in my brain started turning at full speed. You're the one who called the bracers, I said, thinking back to the night before. I'd seen him taking out his compliment before I got up. Yep, I'm just glad they got here before someone got his face caved in, he grinned. You're a real pain in the ass, Henry, but you're a good guy at heart, I smiled back at him. Right? He started to laugh, before realizing precisely what I said. Wait a sec, who's a pain in the ass here? I went to the restaurant that afternoon. Clementine noticed me come in and hurried over. This way, I'll show you to your seat, she said with a smile. I followed her to a corner of the restaurant. A table had been set up away from the other customers. I was a little worried you wouldn't be back after what happened yesterday, she said sheepishly. Don't worry, something like that isn't enough to scare me off, I laughed. But what about you? How are you doing? I feel terrible, she said, hanging her head a little. Even if I had handled things better, you wouldn't have been dragged off by the bracers. That wasn't your fault. I just jumped in because I felt like it, I said, puffing out my chest. Just the teeniest bit. But, she started. Besides, you stood in the way to protect me too, right? I smiled at her. We helped each other out. She smiled back, blushing ever so slightly. Even so, I still want to show my gratitude. Today, your meal's on the house. So, get whatever you like. The same goes for your friend. Clementine quickly looked around, realizing Henry wasn't with me. Oh, he couldn't make it today, I said. So I guess I'll just have to eat his meal too. Both of us burst into laughter. By the time I left the restaurant, the sun was setting. Thanks again for the meal, I said. Really enjoyed myself. Clementine walked me to the entrance. I'm glad to hear it. To be honest, I was worried you might have been bored. You had this dreamy sort of look on your face. What? No, there's no way I could have been bored. After all, I stumbled all over my words and trailed off. Clementine tilted her head at me, confused by my babbling. The weather's so nice today. Yeah, that's it. I stammered out the first thing that popped into my mind, but it just confused her further. Huh? What does that have to do with anything? She asked. I guess it, doesn't. I broke down into nervous laughter, but Clementine just giggled along with me. You're so funny, Edgar. I hope you come back soon. I'll be waiting for you, she said. I'll be waiting too. Anything you need, just let me know. You can count on me whenever, I told her. Huh? She still seemed a little confused, but she smiled at me. Right, I'll do just that. I'm serious, I said. I want to be there for you, anytime you need me. She let out a little gasp. They were a little roundabout, but my words had gotten through to her. If you'll excuse me then, I gave her one more smile before I headed out. I began walking home, but after a moment, I heard someone calling my name from behind me. I turned around to see you there, waving at me. Your bright smile shone all the more brilliantly as the golden light of the setting sun washed over you. It's like a love letter to Clementine, this story. I wound my way through the Loc Canyon, several hours outside town. The cliffs towered above me, stretching... Isn't Local Canyon the place where, Estelle and Analyst train in Trails in the Sky SC? I think that's it. I wound my way through the I can't pronounce it. The Local Canyon. Several hours outside town. The cliffs towered above me, stretching up to the sky. That was the reason why, despite being mid-morning, it felt so dark down in the canyon. I felt as though I was shut away from the rest of the world. The great wide sky was compressed to a thin strip of azure, zigzagging overhead. As I looked up, I saw two birds fly by, far above me. Seeing them, I thought back to my conversation with her the day before. Have you two heard of firefly mushrooms? Clementine asked as she brought us her dinner. Seen them once or twice, never eaten one though, Henry said between mouthfuls of food. Are they mushrooms that look like fireflies, or like mushrooms that grow on fireflies? I asked. Henry, in the middle of a big gulp of water, did a spit take, spraying watery bits of his dinner here and there. What kind of question is that? He coughed up more of his drink. You really think there are fireflies that fly around covered in mushrooms? That'd be gross, man. I actually thought there were fireflies like that, but I kept it to myself. I actually been thinking of making a new dish with some more exotic ingredients like firefly mushrooms. Clementine explained as she cleaned up Henry's mess. If I'm able to whip something up, would you like to try it? Of course, I responded instantly. Henry stared at me, dumbfounded. You signed up for that really quick. For all you know, these mushrooms could be straight up nasty. Hearing that, Clementine frowned angrily. It was actually pretty rare to see her like that. You won't be after I'm done with them. I promise I'll make something extra delicious. But you can't even get them in this town, right? Said Henry. I'm sure someone's selling them somewhere, but are you really gonna make a cross-state trek every time you run low on ingredients? Oh, Clementine said, looking a bit dejected. I still haven't figured that part out. She excused herself and hurried back into the kitchen. That wasn't very nice, Henry, I said, glaring at him. Can you really not find any around here? Who knows? He shrugged. There's a forest past the canyon, so it's possible. I instantly shot out of my seat and turned to leave, but Henry's reflexes were too fast. He grabbed my arm, stopping me. You can go once it's light out, he said with a sigh. So, taking his advice, I set out for the local canyon first thing in the morning. As I walked, the steep canyon walls slowly parted, and before long I found myself standing in front of a verdant forest. Henry had told me to look in especially shadowy parts of the forest or around rotting trees. I made my way to the forest, picking anything even vaguely mushroom-shaped. It didn't take long before the bag I had brought with me had grown heavy with a cornucopia of different mushrooms. I figured if I couldn't find a firefly mushroom for Clementine, I would at least give her a variety of other mushrooms to choose from, most of them probably poisonous. As I continued my search through the forest, I came across a clearing and was struck by how beautiful and tranquil it was. A stream quietly wound its way through the trees. Rays of sunlight filtered through the treetops, shone down, glittering on the surface of the water. A number of squirrels and small birds were perched on the trees above me, chittering and chirping merrily. It was a scene straight out of a painting, more beautiful than anything I'd seen in my days working at the Foundation. Oh, it's rare to see anyone all the way out here. The sound of rustling leaves and I heard the sound of rustling leaves and turned to see an old man step out of a thicket. Traveling alone, young man? He asked me. Trying to outrun a spot of heartbreak, are we? Or maybe you're looking for something. I stared at the old man. Beneath his head of short white hair, I spotted a few long green strands poking out here and there. He averted his eyes and nervously cleared his throat. Well, as for me, I'm here to pick mushrooms, he said. It seems like someone got to all of them first, though. I continued to glare wordlessly at the old man. Beads of sweat began to form on his forehead. He cleared his throat again. Oh, what's that you got in your bag there? Could it be mushrooms, perhaps? So you're trying to strike a bargain, I finally spoke. Yes, exactly, he exclaimed. A youngster like yourself I like a youngster who understands. So about that firefly, I mean, what is it you're looking for all way out here? Firefly mushrooms, I curtly responded. Well, he said proudly, I just so happen to have one right here. He held out a mushroom with a faint green glow to it. I went to some trouble finding this. Be sure to use it well, he said. Sure, thanks, I said, taking the mushroom from his hand and turned to leave. Wait just a minute, he called out. As I walked away, the old man quickly grabbed my arm, stopping me. It was a familiar feeling and a much stronger grip than an actual old man would have. That's not what we agreed on. You need to give me that bag in exchange, he said. I didn't agree to anything, I told him. You just gave this to me. What? That's not fair, he stammered. You think you could treat an old man like that? You're pretty strong for an old man, I gave him an unimpressed look. The same kind he'd given me at least once nearly every day. Henry blanched at my words, and the white wig he was wearing fell slightly askew on his head. Look, just let me have the mushrooms. You're going to get to try your dishes too, I told him. Shut up, man. I just want my share for helping you, he snapped at me. He started grabbing at the firefly mushroom in an attempt to take it back. We began bickering like a pair of children. Give it back. No, let go. Not until you give it back. Unfortunately, we didn't realize how our fight would end until it was too late. In one final attempt to rip the mushroom out of each other's hands, we each let out a yell and pulled as hard as we could. It took us a moment afterward to regain our sense, and to our horror, we saw the mushroom had been torn in two. An awkward silence fell over us as we stared at the pieces in our hands. We picked ourselves up and silently headed back to town. As we left the forest and headed back to the canyon, the sun was beginning to hang low in the sky. You know, Sonny, this trip is a bit rough on this old man's knees, Henry piped up. I wouldn't mind if you carried me back to town. You're pretty spry. I think you can make it back on your own, I told him curtly. Henry sighed and abandoned his old man facade, picking up his pace. We returned to our silence, each of us absorbed in a complicated anger. However, it wasn't long until a voice snapped us back into the reality. You there, halt! What is that you have? I turned to look at whoever it was who had spoken to us, only to be greeted by a familiar face. What were you up to today? You both had leaves in your hair, Clementine asked as she brought us our dinner late that evening. I pulled a vibrant green leaf from behind my ear. I hadn't noticed it there at all. It had been an exhausting day. Oh, remember how we were talking about firefly mushrooms yesterday? Clementine said. I actually decided not to use them after all. I was trying to think about what I could make with them, but I couldn't come up with anything good. She gave a sheepish smile. Well, I guess everything turned out fine in the end, I said with a small, tired grin. Yeah, I guess so, muttered an exhausted Henry. Huh? Clementine tilted her head in confusion at us. Henry and I spent the rest of the night bearing our sorrows and food. Early that evening, it was the bracer, Boris, who had called out to us in the canyon. The same Boris who had led me away after the fight in the restaurant. Henry and I were so preoccupied that we'd crossed the border between the sightseer and the bracer's training facility, without realizing it. We were given a stern lecture, and of course, all the mushrooms I picked were confiscated. Chapter 5. Real Trust. Hey, those jerks don't have another training facility around here, do they? Henry asked. If you keep talking like that, they won't help you next time you're in trouble, I responded, keeping my eyes on the water. Man, who cares, Henry huffed. They're just a bunch of stubborn hard-asses who stomp all over people's hard work. He began fidgeting as he riled himself up, thinking about the other day. Doesn't it tick you off, too? He turned to me. You picked all those mushrooms, and they just took them away. Well, we broke the rules, I shrugged. Man, how could you be so nonchalant about it? He sighed. He didn't even have the energy to be annoyed at me today. I'm getting nothing here. He gave his line a sad tug. I can't focus anymore. Don't they ever get hungry? I asked, looking out toward my own line. I hadn't moved the whole time we'd been out here. Are you even doing this right? Henry asked. It was a good question, one I didn't have the answer to. A small breeze gently nudged our otherwise immobile fishing lines. Okay, Henry said, getting up. I'm going to go find someone who can help us. He left his fishing pole and started walking further up the riverbank. We were back in the Local Canyon. After a disastrous mushroom hunting mission, we had pulled ourselves together and decided to go fishing in an attempt to catch something good for Clementine. After a while, Henry returned with company. For things like this, it's best to get help from a pro, he explained, so he found us one. From his hat and jacket to his rod and the tackle box over his shoulder, the man Henry brought back with him was the very picture of an expert angler. I found him fishing just a bit upstream, Henry told me. He said he's from the Fisherman's Guild. Can't get much more of an expert opinion than that. The fisherman smiled. I'm always help out young anglers like yourselves, he said. Be Shane's greetings, and then it was time to get down to business. So what exactly are you two after today? The fisherman asked. A rare fish, I told him. I want to give it to someone. That's a little vague, he scratched his chin. But I'm definitely on board with giving a fish as a gift. If you're after something rare, though, you'll need the right bait. The fisherman picked up our fishing poles and examined them. Progressive rods, He furrowed his brow a little. That's all we were able to rent in town, sir, I told him. Are you really going to call him sir? Henry whispered to me. What bait are you using? The fisherman asked. Worms, I replied. The fisherman raised an eyebrow, then shook his head at us. Are you sure you're trying to catch a big one? He asked. We thought we'd get some bites if you came around lunchtime, I told him, matter-of-factly. When the fisherman heard this, his other's eyebrow quickly shot up to join the first one. Then he gave an incredulous sigh and pulled a spare rod out of his pack. Here, use this. It's a metal trident rod. It's specifically made for catching big fish, he said, handing me the fishing rod. Use live, medium-sized fish as bait. What about me? Asked Henry. What should I do? You'll be catching the bait fish, the fisherman told him. You can use worms for that one, but you'll need to go to another spot to catch it. Henry seemed to be a bit disappointed he got the less important job, but he did as he was told and moved a bit downstream. You should get a bite from the little ones over there in no time, the fisherman called out. Sure enough, after a minute or two, I heard Henry struggling. He'd gotten something. The fisherman and I walked over to watch. Henry put everything he had into pulling his catch up, and finally, with a mighty pull, he yanked it straight out of the river. Droplets of water flew into the air, sparkling in the sun like diamonds. His battle won, he hoisted his prize up to get a better look at it. A boot? Henry's face puffed up with indignation. He angrily tossed the boot onto the ground and soaked for another few minutes before he cast another line. Eventually, he caught some smaller fish, and I prepared them as bait for the metal trident rod. I cast my new line and waited. 10 minutes later, I felt a sharp tug on the line. My rod started to bend. A shadow appeared in the water, and the surface of the river began to thrash. I waited until the line stopped moving, then tugged with all my strength. A huge fish flew up from the river. I dragged it to the shore and held it up for everyone to see. The fisherman, impressed by its size, let out a whistle. Those long whiskers and pointed teeth. He mumbled to himself as he took a good look at the fish. That's definitely a garvels. Is it rare? I asked. It's a rare one to catch here, he said, still examining the fish. They're known as lake-bottom brawlers, and true to the name, they're usually found in muddy areas at the bottom of lakes. I was elated to have caught such a rare fish, but the fisherman's expression was more serious. Is something wrong? I asked. I'd like to make a request, the fisherman straightened his posture. Would you let me have this garvels? Henry and I looked at each other in shock. Hey, you never said anything about charging us, Henry glared at the fisherman. Don't misunderstand, please, the fisherman said. I'm not trying to scam you or anything of the sort. I want to bring this fish back with me to the Fisherman's Guild. Trying to add someone else's catch to your collection? Henry's brow was still furrowed. That's pretty lame, wouldn't you say? Oh, I agree. That's not the reason I want it, though, said the fisherman, still bearing us the same expression on his face. I'm interested in the ecosystem here. I'd like to find out why a lake-dwelling fish is all the way out here. Also, he continued, this fish has a bit of a reputation as a man-eater. What? Henry jumped a good arch away from the fish as it flopped on the end of my line. It's only an urban legend, said the fisherman. They cough up trinkets from time to time. If it happens to have eaten anything valuable, I'll let you have it. How does that sound for payment? Are you seriously trying to bribe us with some dead person's jewelry? Henry exclaimed from behind a nearby tree. No, please listen. The fisherman remained calm. The man-eating part isn't true. The fish will just swallow shiny objects that fall to the bottom of the lake. Yeah, likely story. Henry still regarded the fisherman with a suspicious glance. He then turned to me. What should we do? I had no reason to trust this random fisherman, but he didn't seem like the kind of person who would lie to us. All right, I said. You can have it. Thank you. I'm in your debt. He took off his hat and gave me a short bow. Where will I be able to find you to deliver your payment? We're usually in the restaurant in town, I told him. Understood. I'll be back in a few days. The fisherman said as he began to pack up his supplies. I need to transport this fish quickly, so I'll be headed out now. I took another look at the fish. Will this fish die from the research you're going to do? I said. The fisherman simply laughed at my worried expression. Oh no, he said. I'll see to it he's well taken care of. He waved to us one last time before heading off, the fish in tow. You really think it's a good idea to trust that guy? Henry asked as we watched the fisherman leave. You know there's a chance we'll never see the guy again, right? I bet that fish is happy it went to someone like him, I said, mostly to myself. What are you talking about, man? Said Henry, raising an eyebrow at me. If you're right and he never comes back, I shrugged, then that's just how it is. We'll just have to go fishing again. Just like that, Henry sighed. I'm a little jealous of how nonchalant you are. Do you know why I like clementines so much, Henry? I asked. Huh? Henry seemed taken aback by the question. I have no idea why myself, I admitted. That's just how it is. With that, we started packing up and heading home. Henry was silent for the entire trip back. Chapter 6. Things I Want to Protect. Memories are strange things. I heard you speaking to me from far away. We make memories, both good and bad, and then without realizing it, we forget them. I said nothing. But it seems like the angry, sad, and bitter memories are the ones that stick around the longest. I remained silent. If that's true, then I want you to be my side for every clumsy mistake and awful day I have, because I want you to remember every moment I spend with you. Edgar? The voice struck my mind like ripples on a still lake, and my consciousness slowly returned to me. I was walking through the canyon. Clementine was at my side. We had just finished delivering food to the Braces training facility, and we were on our way back to town. Oh, sorry, I was just lost in thought, I said, rubbing my temples. Clementine put her hand on my forehead to check my temperature. Well, it seems like you don't have a fever or anything, but if you're not feeling well, you should rest. She grinned at me and continued walking ahead. Watching her, I wished this moment would never end. Why did you ask me to come with you that day? The vision I had of you speaking to me, was it real or just a wishful daydream? Hey Edgar, what's your favorite food? Clementine turned to look at me as we reached the highway. I thought about it. Anything you make for me. That's such an Edgar answer, she giggled. Okay, I'll make you something once we get back. Really? That sounds great, I said. I'm looking forward to it. Is there anything you don't like? She asked. Not really, I said, thinking over. I'll eat pretty much anything. That'll be nice, she said, smiling. Do you like tomatoes too, then? Yep, tomatoes too, I nodded. The word brought back a faint memory, like a tickle at the back of my mind. I just can't stand on myself, she said, shaking her head. After all, you don't like tomatoes. When I was little, my father tried to feed me a tomato, she told me. He spat it out. And I just spat it out right back at him. The scene suddenly bubbled up in my mind again. Edgar? And you have no idea why, but you just can't eat them, right? I asked. What? She let out a small guess. Yes, that's right, but how did you know? Just a guess, I said, looking away. I remember the scene I saw back in the restaurant. Her words just now were the same as back then. I think I understand now, I mumbled to myself. It had been installed into my mind. What? Understand what? What are you talking about, Edgar? She asked, the concern creeping across her face. She grabbed my arm and looked up at me. Before I could say anything, several figures rushed at us from the grass off the side of the highway. Monsters, Clementine yelled. 3 feline monsters stood before us, blocking the road into town and hissing angrily. Edgar, Clementine whispering my name. She was trembling. I calmly moved her behind me. They're on the highway, I said. That means nearby orbit lights must be broken. What do we do? She clutched my arm tighter. We can't get into town, so let's go back the way we came, I said. Clementine looked like she was about to cry. I grasped her hand and held it tight. The braces will be able to help, I told her. We need to go back there, okay? She nodded. Together we turned and started running as fast as we could. We ran for what felt like forever. I lost track of how far we'd gone. Clementine was running out of breath. The sun was nearly done setting, and what little light remained in the dusky sky couldn't reach down into the canyon. We stopped for a moment, and Clementine steadied herself against the canyon wall to catch her breath. I'm sorry, I'm slowing you down, she gasped. No, I'm the one who should apologize, I said. I thought we would have found the braces by now. At that point, I didn't even know which direction their training facility was anymore. Panic from the constant sound of pursuing footsteps had muddled my sense of direction. If we rest for just a minute, I can. Clementine's thought was interrupted by the sight of one of the monsters leaping at her. She screamed. I grabbed a nearby branch and swung in as hard as I could. I knocked it out of the air right before it reached her. However, while I was preoccupied with the first one, 2 more circled around behind us. I felt several sharp claws dig into me. One of the monsters was on my back and the other on my leg. I turned and swung the branch again, knocking them away. They leapt at me once more, however, going after my head and shoulder next. The world became a blur. I swung the branch, hitting one directly in the head. It flew off a short ways and stopped moving. Clementine stood to the side, watching in fear, her hands pressed tightly over her mouth. One of the monsters started to approach her, and I kicked it away. While I did, however, the one behind me leapt at the back of my head, tearing into me. Everything grew dim. I fell to my knees. My ears were filled with the monster's piercing screeches mixed with the sound of Clementine desperately calling my name. The last thing I heard before the world went dark, and the sound of boots and loud command. The last thing I heard before the world went dark was the sound of boots and loud commanding voices. Chapter 7. No blood to shed. All I could do was call his name as I watched him fall to his knees. He glanced at me, his eyes telling me to run away before he slumped to the ground. I ran to his side before I could check on him. I noticed the 2 remaining monsters slinking towards us. So this is from Clementine's point of view then? Okay. The branch he had dropped was too heavy for me to use. I started screaming as loud as I could, begging for anyone to come save us. After a moment, I heard heavy footsteps running towards us, and a voice called out, "Over here." A group of bracers ran up, easily taking care of the monsters that had terrorized us. "Sorry it took us so long. Are you injured?" asked a female bracer. I shook my head at her, but then turned to look at Edgar lying on the ground. The other bracers crowded around to check on him. This guy... What is this? Do we take him to a hospital, or... I can only hear bits of their whispered conversation. "We'll take the man back first," one of the bracers told me, as they started to move Edgar. Is he going to be okay?" I asked. "We can't say," the bracer said, looking away. They carried Edgar away before I could even get a glimpse of him. The rest of the bracers stayed behind to escort me out of the canyon. "We're sorry you had to go through that. We'll get the orbit lights fixed as soon as possible," the female bracer said. She told me her name was Bella. I can't remember. That name sounds familiar for some reason. Nope. False alarm. Alright. When we finally got back to the restaurant, Bella looked at me with a solemn expression on her face. I'd like to apologize again for not getting there sooner, she lowered her gaze. But that young man protected you, didn't he? Edgar's a strong person, I said, forcing a sad smile. After what felt like a long silence, one of the other bracers spoke up. His name was Edgar, he said. I thought he looked familiar. He was that guy with the bag full of mushrooms. The bracer introduced himself to me as Boris. He was trying to bring a ton of mushrooms back with him, but he picked them from a restricted area, so we had to confiscate them all. Yeah, Bella said. He was really reluctant to give up that firefly mushroom. He said someone important to him wanted it. It reminds me, said Boris. I first saw him when we broke up that fight here at this restaurant, huh? He told us he was trying to protect someone. I wonder if he was talking about the same person, Bella mused. She turned to look at me. Huh? Are you okay? Tears were streaming down my face. Oh, she said, realizing what was going on. She hugged me. Do whatever we can to make sure he recovers. Even so, I couldn't stop my tears from flowing. The next morning, I took the day off and headed to the hospital. I gave them Edgar's name at the front desk and asked for his room number. To my surprise, they told me they couldn't find him. I asked them to check again, and they eventually found a nurse who was there the day before. She told me Edgar was brought in, but was quickly moved to another location. So I headed straight there. In no time, I was standing before the Epstein Foundation's Intellectual Development Research Center. Is he an android? This didn't seem like the kind of place anyone would take an injured person to be treated, so why was Edgar brought here? I stood my courage and walked into the building. Inside were a number of people wearing white lab coats and exchanging information on clipboards. I was completely out of my element, but kept going anyway. I spotted a reception desk and approached the woman sitting there. I was told a man named Edgar was brought here, I said. The reception looked at me as though I'd grown a second head. He told me They told me at the hospital that an injured man named Edgar was brought here last night, I repeated, a little more firmly. Which room is he in? I haven't heard of anyone like that being brought here, she furrowed her brow at me. If you can't tell me where he is, can you at least let me know if he's here or not, I told her. I'll wait here as long as I need to. I'm sorry, miss, but I'm going to have to ask you to leave, she said, glaring at me. Like I said, I'm going to wait right here until you tell me where he is, I repeated, raising my voice a little. My outburst caused some of the others in the lobby to stop and turn their heads. Suddenly, I heard a voice behind me. You're right, he is here. Of course I'm right. I let out a short gasp. The voice belonged to Henry. He was wearing a wrinkled lab coat and his long scraggly hair was tied back in a ponytail. I'm so glad to see you. I sighed a breath of relief. I'll take care of things from here, Henry said, to the still irritated receptionist. He led me farther back into the building. Have you seen Edgar? I asked, unable to hold back my anxiousness. Yeah, he replied, but seeing him's about all you can do at the moment. He stopped in front of a large, sturdy door. Henry swiped a keycard on the reader, and the door slowly opened. Its side was a long, dark hallway. At the end of the hallway was a small room surrounded by thick glass walls. As he approached, I saw him, lying on a white slab inside the glass room. Edgar, I called out. Two mechanical arms suspended from the ceiling circled his body, shooting out small bursts of sparks here and there. What's going on, Henry? Yep. As I watched in horror. They're fixing him, he responded as though it was the most natural thing in the world. His brain was especially damaged. So you replace his body with machinery? I asked, struggling to understand the situation. Henry didn't respond. He stood there and calmly watched the arm circle around Edgar. This is just too much, I said. All these machines. I put my hand on the glass between Edgar and me. He got hurt protecting me, I said. So if you can use my body to help him somehow, or... I didn't know what I should do. Just please, I started to choke up. Please, bring him back to normal. I promised that I'd cook something for him, so please. You don't have to worry about that. His voice was so cold and clinical. It took me a moment to realize it was Henry speaking. He hadn't taken his eyes off Edgar the whole time. Why do you think he wasn't afraid of fighting that big drunk? He asked me. How could he keep running that whole time without getting tired? Why didn't he bleed a single drop of blood after those monsters clawed him? Didn't you think it was strange? I looked at Edgar as he lay on the slab. His tranquil expression was illuminated by the sterile white light shining down from above. We didn't replace his body with machinery, Henry said quietly. He was like this from the start. He sheds no tears, no blood runs through his body, no heart beats in his chest. But he's not a normal machine. He's an artificial intelligence wearing human skin. Interesting! Chapter 8. Don't Let Go. I don't understand, I stammered. What are you talking about? My head spun as I struggled to comprehend the reality of the situation. Henry turned to look at me and began explaining. Artificial intelligence. A machine that works like a human brain. He's far more advanced than a simple automated contraption. I stood there silently in a daze. The Epstein Foundation has made a lot of advancements in this area recently, he continued. Right now, we're focusing on on situation assessment and language skills. I couldn't find any words to respond to him. The body has a device that functions like a stomach, so he can even eat too. He didn't get any nourishment from it exactly, Henry said, shrugging, but it was important for him to at least act like a human. You're wrong, I squeezed the words out of my throat. Huh? He's not a machine, I said. Henry's expression didn't change. How could someone so kind be a machine? I continued. He liked talking with us and sharing meals, and he said he wanted to be there for me, and I could tell he really meant it. He's so much like a real person. Precisely, Henry said calmly. He is like a real person. What? No, that's not what I mean, I protested. One of our goals in building him was to create a machine that would be as close to human as possible, Henry explained. The experiment was to discover whether or not an artificial intelligence could experience emotion. I could feel my pulse quicken and my breath catch in my throat. What does that mean then? I gasped. Edgar's thoughts, his feelings, are you telling me that everything about him was just installed into his mind? That's right, Henry said, with the same cold tone. It was for the sake of our research and for further development of this technology. You were randomly chosen to serve as a subject. It was all nothing more than an experiment. No, I started to feel dizzy. Does Edgar know? I asked, steadying myself against the wall. He knows what he is, Henry explained as he gazed at Edgar. But he wasn't told he was part of this experiment. Nor was he aware, Henry turned to me, of the reason he liked you so much. How could you? I asked, my anger starting to build. How could you know all that and just sit by and watch him? Henry remained silent and turned his gaze back to Edgar. You're his best friend, aren't you? You two did everything together. How could you betray him like this? You still don't get it. Henry's words were sharp and cold. Between humans and machines, friendship, let alone love, is impossible. The experiment needed an observer. Our friendship was nothing more than a scenario to facilitate that. All I did was play the role I was given. Henry sighed. He suddenly looked exhausted. You understand now? He asked. Edgar is an intricately constructed machine made to mimic a human. There were so many things I wanted to say, but I couldn't manage to force any words out. That gentle face of his kind voice, the feeling of his hand gripping mine as we ran. Didn't all those things come from Edgar himself? Were they really all engineered in a lab? I had to accept reality, but the more I thought about it, the more my mind resisted the thought. I regained my composure and faced Henry. He looked at me with cold eyes, but behind that clinical, icy stare, I felt like maybe I could sense something else. Sadness, maybe. Are you okay with that? I finally spoke. Can you just pretend all the days you spent with Edgar never really happened? None of them were real to begin with, he replied. Can you forget everything he said to you? I asked. The look on his face as you two talked with each other, every meal you shared with him? Henry didn't respond. He silently turned back towards Edgar. As he gazed through the glass at his friend's profile, the sadness in his eyes returned. After a few moments, he spoke. Edgar was always honest and loyal, he said, quietly. He cared about us. He brought people together. Once I realized that, there was no doubt in my mind he had become human. Henry slowly closed his eyes and gently touched his fingertips against the cold glass. If there was one thing we didn't expect to happen, on the other side of the glass, one of the mechanical arms stopped moving. It was for his personality to develop to such a degree. At some point, he began to feel like a human himself. The other mechanical arm stopped and the room fell silent. I was running through thick fog. Someone was holding my hand, pulling me forward. Was I in a forest? Yes, that must have been the case. Where was Clementine? Had the Bracers come for us? Did she make it back to town safely? I had to hurry. No, not that way. Wait, who are you? Where are we going? What are you going to do with me? Then I woke up. This story's actually pretty good. I like it. Chapter 9, A Sleepless Dream. I woke to find myself lying on a workbench. Hey, you're finally awake. I heard someone say. I turned my head to see Henry enter the room. I tried to sit up, but my movements were sluggish. That's weird, I said. I'm having difficulty moving. Well, you did just come out of major surgery, Henry said. The back of your head was injured pretty bad. I reached back and touched a spot above the nape of my neck. I felt sutures there. That was where the core of me was, the part that made me Edgar. What about Clementine? I asked. Is she okay? Just a few scratches, Henry told me. She's fine. Good. I breathed a sigh of relief, so the Bracers made it in time. Henry nodded with a soft smirk. I want to see her, I told him. Is it safe for me to move? I didn't wait for a response, however. By the time the words had left my mouth, I had already gotten down off the workbench and begun walking toward the door. I told her, Henry said, quietly, about you. The words stopped me in my tracks. She came here to see you after she couldn't find you at the hospital, she said. She was really letting the receptionist have it. And? I asked. I took her to see you while you were being repaired, he said, averting his gaze. She said she understood and then left. Told me she knew there was something off about you. I started laughing. What? Said Henry, taken aback by my reaction. You're a terrible liar, Henry. We both know she'd never say something like that. Henry looked to the floor and let out a little sigh. I'm sure she was shocked, though, I continued. I imagined it would be a lot to take in. I sat back down on the workbench. You're pretty calm about all this, Henry said. One of the benefits of being a machine, I guess. As he said this, I saw a hint of pain and sadness in his eyes. Why didn't you take me back to the dorm after all was fixed? I asked. Why did you try to stop me from seeing Clementine? And why are you acting so strangely right now? I can't understand. I ran my fingers through my indigo hair, then down to my neck, covered in lifelike yet synthetic skin. My hands came to rest on the sutures. After all, I'm just an artificial intelligence. Henry fell silent. I realized something while I was walking with Clementine, I told him. Information about her was installed into my mind. The kind of food she doesn't like, stories from her childhood, even images of her smiling face. It was just random information to get me to focus on her, I continued. Or at least that's all it was supposed to be. I guess something unexpected happened. Henry continued to stand there silently listening to me. Those times where my head felt muddled and I had strange visions, I went on, those were my own hopes getting mixed in, weren't they? My own desires, wanting to talk to her, wanting to be with her. Henry didn't say anything, but I could still see the sadness in his eyes. Does any of that change what's going to happen now? I asked. You're pretty chatty after your surgery, huh? Henry said, quickly putting on a tired smile. The experiment you were a part of is over now, he said as he walked towards me. This stage of it anyway. The results show some danger. He stopped right in front of me and looked me in the eyes. They decided up top that an AI that develops self-consciousness is too difficult to manage, he said. Your thought data is going to be removed and analyzed, and then you'll be given a new personality and appearance. After that, the experiment will continue. What about you, Henry? I asked. Is that what you want? It is, he said, averting his gaze again. You're nothing but trouble. I signed up for this experiment to advance my career. Why else would I babysit some artificial intelligence? Now that the experiment's over, my job here is done. So I'm too difficult to manage, I asked. Is that what you think, Henry? Yeah, he said. You almost got your face punched in trying to fight some drunk. You made me chase after you on some hunt for mushrooms you weren't even sure existed. Then you dragged me out to catch some rare fish and ended up giving it away. I've had it up to here with you. His voice wavered and his face scrunched up as though he was trying to hold something back. I understand, I said. I'll do what you tell me to, Henry. What? He started. I'm not going along with the Foundation wants, I told him. I'm just taking my friend's advice. What about Clementine? He asked. I shouldn't see her, I said. It's for the best. Why? All of a sudden, he stammered. Where's that calm scientific demeanor you had a moment ago? I gave him a small smile. You should hurry up before I change my mind. Henry closed his eyes and his face scrunched up again. No matter what happens to me, I'll still think of you as my friend, that's all, I said as I lay back down on the workbench. Edgar. Henry's voice wavered. It feels like it's been a while since I've heard you say my name, I said. He turned away and began preparing the equipment. I could hear the machinery begin to hum around me. I felt my body getting lighter, starting to float away. My eyes were open, but I couldn't see anything. It felt like I was the only one there. Suddenly, I felt the pen and paper put into my hands. Henry must have brought them to me to write a letter. I had no idea where to start, though. There was so much I wanted to say, but I didn't know where to begin. My hand holding the pen started shaking. The only lines that made it on paper were worthless scribbles. I needed to thank her. I needed to tell her I was sorry, and also... It was evening, and I was at the restaurant, working like always. I had nowhere else to go, and work kept my mind occupied. It was only a few hours ago that I was in that building when I saw Edgar's eyes open. I ignored Henry calling after me and ran out of the room. If we were never going to be able to see each other again, I thought it would be best if he didn't see me there. I couldn't pretend it had never happened, but I needed to forget. I decided it was the only way I could keep myself going. Excuse me, miss. A voice from behind me shook me out of my thoughts. Oh, sorry, I'll be right with you. I quickly wiped the tears from my eyes and turned around. A middle-aged man was standing at the entrance to the restaurant. Finale. Heartless Edgar. We're almost done. 2 hours of reading, right? Is a young man named Edgar here? The man asked me. Hearing the name brought a sudden sharp pain to my chest. He told me I could usually find him at this restaurant, he continued. I started to tell him, but I stopped myself. He isn't here today. Oh, that's a shame, he said. How about Henry? I shook my head. He let out a disappointed sigh. Well, if you see either of them, could you let them know I'll be at the end? As he turned to leave, I noticed his jacket had an emblem with a fish on it. I promised him I would, but after he left, I regretted not telling Edgar it wouldn't be coming back. That night, I closed the restaurant without seeing Edgar. When it occurred to me that every night would be like this from now on, I felt an emptiness inside of me. Closing for the day, huh? I heard a voice as I locked the front door and turned to go home. It was Henry. What do you want? I couldn't figure out if seeing him made me more sad or angry. He didn't say anything. He just handed me a folded slip of paper. I didn't read it, he said, quietly, expecting him to leave. But he just turned his back to me and stood there. I opened up the paper. It was covered in shaky writing. This is the first letter I've ever written. I can't seem to organize my thoughts, so please forgive me. Machines don't know how to forget. We can faithfully record data or faithfully delete it. That's all. I thought that for someone like me, forgetting would be as easy and simple as deleting a file, not something to regret or mourn. But as I write this now, I'm filled with a strange feeling, like I don't want to forget. It's because I met you who accepted me, despite the fact that I have no blood in my veins and no heart in my chest. You saw me not as a machine, but as a person. You brought love and beauty to the life of this simple puppet. Thank you. I'm sure it must be disappointing for us to part like this. I'm sorry for that. The lie I've lived is too big to beg your forgiveness for. I ask only that you don't be angry with Henry. Finally, I want to express the feeling that I've been holding in my heart since I first met you. May you find all the happiness in the world. That is my true prayer for you. I fell to my knees, crying, gripping the letter in my hands. I couldn't stop my tears, and I couldn't care if my sobbing echoed through the dark streets. I didn't care if anyone saw me or what they thought. Edgar, I forced a name out through my sobs. Hearing me, Henry turned around. His eyes were puffy, and he had a pained expression. Please, I looked up at him. Help me. He met my gaze. He hesitated. I understand. I stood alone in front of the door Henry had brought me to. Once we had gotten there, he told me it was as far as he could take me. As he turned to leave, I told him about the man who came to visit the restaurant. Henry's expression grew serious, but he said nothing and continued walking. But none of that mattered now. I took a deep breath and stepped through the door. Who are you? The room was filled with researchers in white lab coats. They were huddled around a workbench. Lying on top of the workbench was Edgar. How'd you get in here? Shouted one of the researchers. This is a restricted area. Undeterred, I walked forward. Give me Edgar, I told them. Several of them looked at each other and chuckled. Oh, you're that girl who was here the other day, said one. Know that Edgar's data has already been extracted for analysis, said another. The Edgar you knew doesn't exist anymore. His feelings were real, I said, my voice cracking. No, a researcher said. That's not possible. Because artificial intelligences are not human. They're simply tools. Compilations of technology and techniques. Are tools the only things you care about, I asked? The only things you can see? What are you talking about? Said the researcher. Did you even try to see the bonds he created? I pointed to Edgar, the circle of people he brought together. I feel the same way, said a voice from behind me. The man who had visited the restaurant earlier entered the room. He and I still have things to discuss, he said. I need to thank him for helping me. Another civilian? Exclaimed one of the researchers. What is security doing? It doesn't matter what you say, said another. We're not going to stop at research for such sentimental reasons. That's right, chimed in yet another one. You can't change our decision. Well, sentimental arguments won't work. We'll just have to go through more official channels, won't we? A deep voice reverberated through the room as a pair of footsteps approached from the hallway. The Bracer Guild has received an official request from the Fisherman's Guild for the return of Edgar. The man held out his Bracer badge. It seems he made it just in time. The one with him let out a sigh of relief. Yeah, I didn't think we'd be helping him out again so soon. It was Boris and Bella. Upon hearing Boris's words, the researcher's expressions changed. Now, do you see how many people care about Edgar? I stepped forward. I'm begging you, please give him back to us. Looking at our reinforcements, they started to shrink back. But think of the risks, one stammered. If an artificial intelligence develops its own will, it can no longer be controlled. Yes, said another. If we can't control him, there's no telling what he might do. Someone else may even take him and use him for malicious purposes. But, I started. Even in the face of all our support, they still refused to return him to us. We refused to give up too, however. In the middle of our standoff, a familiar voice broke the silence. Then let me make a suggestion. After what felt like a long time, I slowly opened my bleary eyes. My mind felt hazy and my body was sluggish. I lay there staring at the ceiling of my dorm room for a bit before turning to the side. There I saw Clementine sitting next to my bed. Her eyes were full of tears, but she was smiling more brightly than I'd ever seen her. I found out what had happened later. Thanks to everyone, my personality was re-uploaded back into my body. I was allowed to keep living as Edgar, so long as I didn't leave town. Clementine had agreed to stay with me and would be confined to town as well. She said that didn't matter, however, as long as we could be together. But the morning after all that, I'll never forget the words you said to me, the ones I'd always wanted to hear you say. Good morning, Edgar. The end. I like that story. That was a good story. Time to complete the cycle. We'll have a fully completed save file. All prepared for when Cold Steel 4 comes out in an undisclosed amount of time. Although we can hope it'll come out later this year because Sean Chiplock, the voice of Reen, made a tweet.
Roll! Heal it! It's down!
It's mine! It's my turn! I can't!
An opening! My turn! It's down!
Keep it up! I'm going!
I forget what was good.
Strike!
Yes!
Oh, Windblade is stronger in this mode? Really? Isn't it 40% delay normally? Or is it always 30% delay? I could just be having a faulty memory, but eh, weird.
Now's our chance!
Too slow!
It's my turn! Ha! Now's our chance!
Too slow!
It's my turn! I can't!
An opening!
Yes! Azure Wing, now's our chance!
Too slow! Very well. Strike! Let's go!
I really should just link them all with green so I get the bonus damage from break targets. Either way, Final Boss 1 is dead. Now we just have to kill Final Boss 2. Gotta go fast. Even though we're just going to wipe the floor with them.
It's my turn! You can't escape!
My turn! It's down! It's mine!
My turn! Yeah!
It's my turn!
Is this the proper music for this fight? I can't remember.
I'll handle this.
Very well.
It's my turn! You can't escape!
It's my turn! Now! An opening! Very well.
It's working.
Now! An opening! Let's go! He's down! It's mine!
Here I go! Wide open! It's mine! Yes! Ha!
It's my turn! It's down! What?
Final boss 2 down. And now we just have to beat him with Angry Reen. Reen, but he is mad. Angry Reen. Smashy, smashy. And we're done. I think I played this enough to give a proper review of it, right? If you can consider my opinions a proper review. The only issue is that I cannot give it as high of a score as I normally would, because the ending is horrible, because you don't end the story in the exact middle of a climax. That's not how you do it. Does get me more hype for CS4, for Cold Steel 4 though. Yeah, I'd say the game probably gets a good I'd say like averaging like all the scores I would pretty much give the game. I'd say it comes out to about a 8, and then take off an extra 0.5 because the ending is absolute garbage. Well, I'd say like it would get like a 9. I would say. I'd give it a 9 if the ending wasn't shit. This game and the series in general is just really damn good. But because of how bad the ending is, I gotta give it like a 7.5. I enjoyed it, but it's like, it's just like with Mass Effect 3. Except for actually getting a sequel and some resolution in like a year or two. And also I don't speak Japanese, so I can't play the Japanese game, so that's out of the question for me. But it's like, I can't give Cold Steel 3 a good rating right now for the same reason I would not be able to give Mass Effect 3 a good rating. The ending's garbage. The journey can be fun as hell, but if the ending's garbage, it kind of sours a lot of the experience. Still a good game. And if for whatever reason you're watching this, yeah, we're done. If for whatever reason you're watching this and you haven't played any of the games, start from the beginning. Don't start from this game. Starting from this game is a stupid idea. It's possible, but you don't get nearly as much enjoyment out of the game. Well, we're done with this game. You can put the PS4 away for a little bit. So then, the next game's already chosen. I'm gonna do this so it doesn't go back to the title menu. Next game's already chosen, and it is Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order because I got it as a gift and I promised a friend it would be the next game I play. I'm not looking forward to it because I am horrible at Souls-like style games. I am bad at the combat. Don't worry, I'll be sure to keep a counter for the amount of deaths that I have during that game. It'll be a fun time. So, we'll see if I can get that set up tonight. If I can, see you then. But either way, see you next time.